Tracy Ann will be spotlighting the CDI. So either you're watching the CDI or you're watching the other person participating in the meeting. Also, if you can make sure that your name is listed at the bottom of the screen for the purposes of the captioner and the interpreters. This meeting is captioned. If you want to turn on your captions, you may do so at the bottom of your screen where you see CC, closed captions. If you have any questions, please click in the chat, raise your hand, and wait for me to call on you, and then you will be spotlighted. When you are finished, I will say goodbye. Make sure I don't want to turn off your screen too quickly. So that's how we're going to work this today through Zoom. Is everybody ready? And hello and welcome to everybody. Hello there. Wow, what a year, huh? I would like to have approval of the last meeting minutes, and I want to thank Vikki for doing a remarkable job on those minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the meetings? Jason Corning moves. Is there a second to his motion? Marny seconds it. Is there any objections? I'll give you a minute to type in chat if you object. Seeing no objections, then the minutes are approved. Now, I hope you all received the agenda that I sent out. I would like to start with my report. Wait, I see something. Michelle says yes. What does that mean? Meaning that the minutes are approved, right? I just want to verify. And Norma says yes. If you feel that the minutes should not be approved, please type in chat your preference now. If I see no one typing anything in chat, then I'm assuming that the meeting minutes are approved as written. Okay, so I see Michelle says yes, she received the agenda. Okay, all right. Now we're going to we'll proceed with the agenda, following the agenda as written. Now, as the chair, this is my report. I know we are tired of watching Zoom meetings, and we'll try to move ahead pretty quickly with this meeting and my report. I was contacted by several people regarding the email for the chair. In the past, we had a chair email. Stephanie Summers just recently gave that email over to me, and I talked with Director Brick about setting up a government chair email, not only for the chair, but also for everyone who is on the board to receive emails so that everybody can see. And Director Brick is going to see if he is able to set that up for us. Now, our bylaws. The 2 comments about our bylaws. One was from me and one was from Michelle. I was talking with Director Brick, and he said the suggestions that Michelle and I made would require legislative action. So we agreed that it did not really need to be addressed. I sent out to you all about creating a vlog. MDAD had asked us to partner with the elections, and Michelle said it would be nice to include various organizations, and I like that idea. So Tracy Ann, I believe, is contacting the various organizations to create a vlog. I spoke with MDAD. The chair recognizes board member Jason Corning.
I wanted to ask how many of the committees would be working on elections, on the election issue? How many of the members?
This is Dr. Lisalee. I can respond. ODHH we have contacted various organizations, and we're in the hopes that everyone will join in to make this vlog.
I'm not seeing Jason clearly. He's too close. Jason said that wasn't exactly my question. I think I was too close to the computer screen. So I'm wondering, out of the council, oh, is anyone on the council serving as election judges? I will be working those 4 days myself as an election judge. So I would be interested in participating within this blog, because I do know what the rules and the regs are in regards to that, because I am currently taking this training, and this is my 3rd year serving as an election judge. So I would be willing to participate in this as well.
Tracy Ann, could you please contact Jason Corning, and perhaps you can see about working on this community vlog together? Okay. MDAD, the Maryland Association of the Deaf, contacted me about the letter that was sent out by ODHH for the interpreter bill. And I also met with Director Brick and asked for additional clarification on this letter to understand it better. Now, as he explained it to me, ODHH was asked to write a letter, and this letter offers various suggestions. ODHH went ahead and created the letter, and that was it. So it's not an official approval for any bill. It was just that the department had asked ODHH to make recommendations, and that's what that letter addresses. Now, in our minutes, if we decide that we want to support the bill, we cannot vote in support of the bill, but we can make comments in our minutes to say, for example, most of the citizens in this council support the bill and do not include the state in our motion. So it can be listed in our minutes, though. Now, before I became chair, and then after I became chair, many people have contacted me regarding the Maryland School for the Deaf. And I've had many meetings with individuals, with various groups. And I was also asked from the voices of the MSD survivors to be involved in a meeting with ODHH. I think the meeting went well. ODHH has offered many resources. And I've been contacted about parents and community members regarding the systemic racism. And I don't like the word of disability, but different abilities is my preferred term. I was also contacted about the role of Kappa Gamma in the Maryland School for the Deaf, and specifically about meeting with Director Brick. He and I both met. And I also had a meeting with the director, Patrick Lally, and expressed all of the concerns from the community that they sent to me. I gave him all of these concerns. There's also some concerns about ODHH itself, about Director Brick's involvement in Kappa Gamma. And I spoke with Director Brick and spoke directly with Patrick Lally about the community's concerns, and emailed Kiefer Mitchell about these concerns. They told me that they understood and they wrote notes as we met. And they said that they could not speak with me, that it's their employees. And I also got a contact from some of the staff of Lisalee, clarification. You recently got an email from which staff? I got an email concerning behavior from the staff and what they were going to do during work hours. Several emails regarding that. So I talked with Director Brick and I shared their concerns with him. And I also talked about this with Patrick Lally. And again, he is not, it's an employee issue, an HR issue, and he is not addressing that. I just handed over the concerns from the community. I also involved is not the correct word to use. I know that there are 2 bills regarding interpreters, and it seems that they will be coming up again this year during the legislative session. An educational bill for interpreters, as well as a general use interpreter bill.
Hold on.
Wow.
Wait.
Hold on.
No. Just a second. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. You were small. Okay. So we'll see what happens with those bills. Now, also at the last meeting, we talked about EIPA testing system. And it seems that right now, CCBC will be setting up a testing, and Johns Hopkins may also. So there'll be 3 testing sites for the EIPA. One last thing I wanted to share with you all is this. one of our board members, Norma, this is her article that was published in Odyssey. So congratulations. So that's the end of my chair's report. And I'm going to call on the vice chair. Marny Helfrich, do you have any vice chair's report?
I don't at this time, thank you.
Secretary Vikki Porter, do you have any report for us at this time? Hi, I have no report at this time. Thank you. For Secretary Vikki Porter, I would ask that all of the reports since be included in the next meeting minutes, okay? Thank you. Director Brick, now it's your turn for a report. Do you have a report for us?
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the council. I was asked to provide a brief summary in response to our actions from the past 3 months. In honor of 2020, I have picked 20 things to focus on. So I will briefly comment on all of that we have been doing. Now, within regards, again, I have to admit that I did not fully understand all of the chair's response and the questions about my staff's integrity. So that was a little bit of a surprise. It was shocked today. Again, I know that my staff has been working days and nights. So this is new information to me, her concerns in regards to my staff. So again, I will have a dialogue after this meeting to find out exactly what those concerns would be. And the so-called allegations. So this is new to me, and I don't want to address that at this time. I would like to address that people out there have been really upset that the council members and the office, again, I want to know that we are committed to changing the system, to address autism and racism. People are very resistant to that systematic change. I understand that, but our work will continue to address systematic change. Again, I do have good news this morning, which was fantastic. We just went to the grand opening of the Sisters in Style, the new clothing boutique in Frederick, Maryland. It was great to see this recognized. We also want to recognize Clear Mask, who's owned here in Baltimore. We love that deaf-owned businesses are thriving. Streetcar 82 is also thriving. This makes us very excited that while coronavirus pandemic is happening, our deaf ecosystem is continuing to grow. Second thing I wanted to mention is the International Sign Awareness Week. Again, it's fantastic. Boyd Rutherford provided a video announcement supporting sign language. And he provided this in sign language. Again, I know that this has been shared with our council, and thank you all for who participated and have been sharing this. I want to emphasize again our commitment to addressing deaf and hard of hearing issues that are affecting all of us. My third comment today, as we know, it's Deaf Awareness Week as well. Last night, the Deaf Culture Digital Library hosted an event, and it was a wonderful program. They had a panel, we had performers, poets, authors, and various other individuals who were involved. I was very excited, and I'm very excited to see the future work for the Deaf Culture Digital Library. We have been working closely with them to get them up and running. Our fourth event. As you know, the census is happening right now. So we have been creating videos, and please fill out those census forms. Next on our list, the Lieutenant Governor announced that October 15th, in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month, we'll be disseminating through 211. I believe it's 211. They send text messages and share information and emergency announcements through the state. We will also be celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month in Spanish. Those will be sent in Spanish as well. Number 6, our office has been focused on working with various counties throughout the summer, and finally, all counties are on board for texting to 911. All counties throughout Maryland are on board. We are very excited for that news. 7th, legislature has asked for our annual report. Again, we wanted to reply with various policy options and how to best address a policy framework or a bill to address, again, going back to the topic of fraudulent or unqualified interpreters. We have submitted a response back to legislature, and you may view that if you so may. 8th on our list, we've had a conversation with the Banneker Douglas Museum, which again is under the purview of the governor and the administration. As many of you may know, there's a beautiful mural of Breonna Taylor in Annapolis.
By her.
Many Black deaf artists have been focused on becoming on the visual arts. We want to send a message to various communities that shows that the work that we are doing with DeVia and visual art is very involved. So again, how can we make those connections between our Black deaf artists and mainstream deaf art and mainstream Black artists and encourage everyone to work together? Delegate Key from Annapolis, from Frederick County. She works in Annapolis. She will not be sponsoring or introducing an educational interpreter bill. There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of advocacy, so she will not be moving forward with that at this point. But I believe that Chair Lisa Egbert may have an update on this information. Am I incorrect? Chair, did you want to emphasize?
Can you say that again? I was on the side chatting.
I'm sorry, did you want me to stop, Chair? You just were trying to gather my attention.
Secretary Vikki had her hand raised. And I didn't know if I should recognize her now or should I wait until later?
Oh, yes, sure. Go ahead and recognize her now. That's good. This is a good time. Let me pause in my report. I'm not finished with my report. I have more to go, but let me take a moment to pause.
Well, I think it's best for you to finish your report, and then we can go to those who have their hands raised.
In the interest of time, sounds great. So let me conclude my report, and then Vikki, the floor could be yours. So we have been meeting almost daily, less and less as time goes by. Again, in regards to Maryland School for the Deaf, we're hearing less and less. There's accusations of possible racism and various issues and concerns that the Board of Trustees is addressing. I don't know that there's a new superintendent search process. The previous superintendent had retired early. So we wanted to provide a reassurance on the governmental process, how you can contact your legislatures, contact the Board of Trustees. Again, we're just becoming an information clearinghouse at this point to share information about the situation at MSD with the community. We are currently working on Legislative Awareness Day, and we're trying to develop various strategies and how we can host this event again. Because of coronavirus, it's no longer a possibility to meet in person. As you know, we typically host Legislative Awareness Day at Annapolis. We're considering evening programs, but again, we'll see as this develops. We want our community to be involved and maybe do something similar to what we did a few years ago. If we're not ready, we're ready. We'll figure this out. Again, we want to encourage voting. As you've seen, we've provided weekly vlogs. We had a panel. I was involved in a panel on the Center for Democracy and Deaf America. It's DCDA. we were discussing how to
Okay,
inform people
information.
how to register and get the information out on how to vote. Again, making sure that you are registered before you attempt to vote and sharing that information on how to do that. Who?
Karen Smith.
Darren Smith, who works for Department of Social Services, is looking into various ideas in how to develop a statewide ASL video. Again, providing access in ASL as as customer service and providing that communication. So we're supporting him in this process. So look forward for that. We're now celebrating 30th anniversary of the ADA as well. That has been recognized by Governor Hogan. And we're very proud to celebrate 30 years since the ADA has been signed into law. The state budget is bad. We're in a severe deficit. As you know, this is a serious situation. I did lose one position within my office. Again, this was in direct correlation to coronavirus and the budgetary impact. The federal and the state representatives are trying to advocate for some reimbursement for the state, some state aid from the federal government. But at this point in time, we're not sure how that will pan out.
And the state's making cuts.
And the state is in the process of making budget cuts.
Maryland Relay.
Maryland Relay moved from Department of Information Technology under Department of Disabilities. We've been helping to work out any glitches in that transfer. We've been disseminating financial education videos on how individuals can make financially informed decisions. We continue to be a leader on the national level in using certified deaf interpreters for various press conferences and broadcasts. We've been doing this for 5 years. We're continuing to do this throughout the state. Again, we're gaining more notice. And as you see, court just ordered the White House to provide sign language interpreters on the screen as well. It's been a long time coming, but we have a long way to go. It's fantastic. Jeff Rosen, who is a deaf attorney and was the general counsel for the National Council on Disabilities. He is a Maryland boy himself. He was just appointed to be on the commission for Maryland Commission on Civil Rights. Really looking forward to having a stronger partnership with MCCR going forward. Again, advising on the impact. We're looking forward to see the impact Jeff Rosen has on the commission. There's a lot going on. I want to thank my staff who has been highly involved and busy. Again, thank you also to Nancy Lynn Ward, Dr. Nancy Lynn Ward for her leadership. Dr. Ward has been pulling in various commissions, various individuals, and creating informational videos about the coronavirus. My staff has been coordinating this effort and been involved with her, but Dr. Ward's help and advice in gathering volunteers and creating these videos has been instrumental. Again, please stop by and please look. They're on FEMA. They're on various state websites who have been borrowing the material we've developed. Again, thank you. We are facing various challenges, but there are so much good stuff coming down the pike, and there's so much good stuff happening now. We are all getting stronger together. Thank you for your involvement. And again, I wanted to make one last comment. Yes, truly, I very much appreciate the chair of the council. I appreciate the council itself and the former chair. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your advice. Very often I need ideas on and different strategies on what to do and how to do it. And I thank you for that feedback. Together we are stronger. And now I'm open for any questions. My report is concluded.
If there's any questions, please raise your hand in the chat box and I will call on you to participate. Vikki had her hand raised first. Secretary Porter. Secretary Porter, can we open her spotlight? Hello, everyone. My question is, Chair Egbert spoke about complaints against ODHH's staff. So I want to know if MACDHH officers can participate in that discussion.
So I was contacted by various individuals about involvement with Kappa Gamma. How does that influencing ODHH in the office? How, if the staff is only working between 8 and 5, if they're not working between 8 and 5, what does that mean? So again, I just brought those concerns. And again, I did bring those concerns to Director Brick. And I guess it was his executive office, like he runs the office, he should be aware of any concerns. I just wanted to bring those concerns to him.
Okay, so my question, this is Vikki again. My question is if I think 2 council meetings ago, Council Member Gray, at that time he was the chair, and I suggested that ODHH expand their staff. DC just passed a law to establish a office for the deaf and hard of hearing, and I think they'll have 6 full-time staff, and DC is a much smaller entity than we are, and having 3 here for Maryland and them having 5 or 6 for a small entity, I think it's something we should think about. The problem is maybe we need more diversity, and maybe one way to achieve the diversity is to hire additional people for more roles and responsibilities. That's my thought.
If you see the email, I can add that to the agenda now. That discussion to the agenda. I did see that. It's under new business. And again, I'm happy to discuss that.
Great. Vikki says, great, thank you.
Thanks.
Just want to make sure, does anybody else have their hand raised to speak? The chair calls on Jason Corning. Jason?
I'm curious, Kelby. Do you have a plan how we will inform the deaf-blind community to use text to 911? How are we promoting that to the deaf-blind community? I just want to make sure that there's a hands-on model, hands-on approach in how we inform and teach people, and the testing for it. I remember 1 or 2 years ago, we had a meeting up at the Frederick School for the Deaf. A police officer arrived and I tested it, and I had the opportunity to test it, and it did not work from my phone. Again, I just want to make sure that all deaf-blind individuals feel comfortable using this new technology. And if they have a situation where they're not comfortable in and need to reach out, I want to make sure that is an option on the table for them.
Now, Jason, that is an excellent question. We have 911, text to 911, and now there is some discussion about how to disseminate additional information, including community training. You are absolutely correct. We have to determine who is best to involve and who will push for that. And thank you so much again. And I will be following up on that later. I might be contacting you for additional ideas. Thank you.
Can we work on that together?
Say that again, please repeat. Repeat your question, Jason. I'm sorry. What I said was, could you and I partner and work on that? Because, my business focuses on breaking down communication barriers for deaf people. And I think it would be a good opportunity for us to be involved in the community with you.
I do understand. So if this is a business opportunity, we need to go through the proper channels. There's a procedure for that. But again, I do want to continue this conversation with you regardless. Absolutely. I want to get your ideas on this. Yes. Thank you, Jason. Chair, are there any more questions for me regarding my report?
Are there any questions for Director Brick? I'll give them a minute for people to raise their hand in the chat box. Oh, I'm sorry, I did not see you. Dr. Larry Gray had his hand raised. Hello, everyone. I want to follow up with Vikki Porter's comments.
Okay.
We already made a motion to add to the office and expand the staff, and that was passed through the council previously. So I want to follow up on that. I know there's been discussion and dialogue, but I think there was a motion or two that was already moved and passed. What is the status, Director Brick?
That's a great question, Dr. Gray. And again, on a personal level, yes. If it was up to me, we would be expanded. I can imagine all of the different services that I would provide. We could become a direct service provider, provide more back, give more back to the community. Again, the office seems to be moving in the opposite direction at this point. So last year, we did pass the budget that would have increased our office and for this upcoming year. I was thrilled to receive an increase in my office's budget. Before, we had a part-time staff. We had increased their positions. They would increase the hours for that part-time position. I was thrilled. And as soon as coronavirus hit, and I actually was ready to hire that position and fill it, they cut it. So now it's a struggle, and this is a constant negotiation. I'm anticipating more budget cuts. So I'm not sure where we will end up at the end of this budget discussion, but we're working through it, and I can continue to push for more money, absolutely. But the community, if the community feels that our staff needs to expand, the community really needs to do their part with legislature. The governor, I work directly with the governor on that, but again, this really needs to be a legislative process and advocacy from the community.
This is Dr. Gray. Thank you very much for your response. Are there any other questions for Director Brick from the council? I, as the chair, recognize board member Norma Moran.
Hello. Hi, everyone. And to be honest, I didn't have a question until Kelby's last comment. And you've mentioned that we, the community, need to do our part to reach out to the governor and legislature in regards to advocating to expand ODHH. You did make that comment, correct?
Director Brick says, yes, I did.
And I do realize that that could be on the onus of the community, but are there resources, or could you develop resources in how to properly advocate? There may be individuals within the community who could advocate. But again, if there's a deadline, if there is tips and tricks on how to do so, that would be great.
Director Brick is saying, that's a great question, Norma. Our staff, if you go, we have tips on sheets on what to do, how a series of videos, how to address the legislature and the various parts of the legislative process. And people have contacted me, and I've steered them in that direction, and now they know how to do this. So every year we do a legislative awareness day. And that is where we provide individuals with training and workshops on how to advocate, how to communicate different issues within the community. And when the issues arise that the government wants to hear about, we tell individuals how to advocate for their own wishes. And we try to push for the community to take ownership. And that has grown as we have given that information to the community. Any additional ideas, we are open and welcome to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, you're most welcome. This is Dr. Egbert. Are there any other hands being raised for questions or concerns? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Director Brick, for your report. Next, we move on to old business. The first one is systematic injustice. And that was from our past meeting. It was recommended by Lynn, Lally, a board member, to add to this agenda. And I've asked all of the various states' reports. I've questioned about the reports and gotten replies back. So I want to, you know, are those reports satisfactory under A on the agenda, or do we need to address it more today?
I'm seeing none. So moving on to agenda item 4B. Oh, do you want me to repeat that? Yes. So under old business 4A, at the previous meeting, we had talked about the need to discuss systematic injustices within the state of Maryland, within the state system and the state government. So what I did at that time is I asked all of our state representatives on the council, again, it's not necessarily a report that I asked for, but just some information to share with the council on what they're doing to address the coronavirus and also the social injustices that we're facing as a society. So I'd asked for the state representatives to give that report back to us. I've shared that with, I did ask for some clarifications on some of the reports that were submitted back to me. And based on those reports that have been shared with the council, are there any concerns? Do you have any ideas? Do you have feedback? Again, we're going to focus on the systematic injustices and within the state of Maryland. Are there any comments from the board? The chair recognizes Dr. Gray.
Hello, and thank you for calling on me. Yes, I saw the what you sent out and asking the state representatives to give feedback. We also had asked additional questions of them, but I don't believe we received any additional responses to our questions back to the state representatives. For example, a question would be, what were you doing about outreach? Next, what are you doing about publicizing your services for your agency? I don't believe we got any responses to that. Now, once we receive this information, what is our goal and what are we going to do with this information as a council?
Did you have a specific state agency that you were thinking of in regards to outreach that you had concerns, or was it for all?
This is Dr. Gray, actually for all. We have them, but we got their response, their initial responses, and then I want to know what they are doing to ensure that their agency or their services are informed to the deaf community, because many of the deaf individuals in our state don't know about them. And what are they doing about outreach? It's insufficient to post something on their website and stand back and do nothing. But what are they doing? What action are they taking to spread the information to the deaf community? One is quality assurance of interpreters. What are you doing about that? So I would appreciate more information from the various state representatives of their individual agencies to give us more feedback. Once we've gotten their feedback, then what are our goals going forward?
So I would now like to ask the state representatives to respond. So I do see in chat, Michelle Westfall has typed, maybe we could set up meetings with the agencies to discuss their outreach efforts further. So that's one suggestion. But the chair does recognize Norma Moran. Oh,
No.
no, apologies. Interpreter clarification for Aaron Buckskis from MSD.
Hello, and thank you. I would like to just add in response to Larry's comments. Our team at the Maryland School for the Deaf asked me about the outreach question, and I felt that it was very broad. They asked me, are they looking, what are they exactly looking for? So it does help to clarify. Our response was very broad on the outreach terms. And if you're looking for specifics, then please do send something our way so I can help to answer some of the specific questions. And I do appreciate that you asked for additional information based on what we had given. If you're looking for more information, please give us some more details on how we can then share that information. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Erin. I'm recognizing Vice Chair Helfrich.
I'm trying.
Marny, we hear you.
Okay, great. Similar to what Erin was saying, I think that the answers to those questions and even the type of questions are going to be really different for different agencies, and it might be more productive for sort of to discuss specific concerns about specific services or programs that different agencies operate if people feel like there's not enough communication around those programs or initiatives. For example, for us at the State Department of Education, our primary consumers, if you will, are school systems and not members of the public. So what we do in terms of communicating about our work is really different than what other agencies might do. And so I think if people have, members of the council have concerns about certain state opportunities or activities or programs not being well understood in the community, maybe it would be more effective to come at it from that end rather than from the agency end. Just a thought about how we might move forward.
Okay, first of all, let me call on Council Member Mary Lynn Lally, and then after Mary Lynn, I'll call on Jason Corning.
I only see one person, the interpreter. I only see the interpreter. Okay, I'm having problems with this. So anyway, I did make some notes. Can you see me okay? Mary Lynn, can you move over just a little bit? Better, better. Okay. I'm on vacation, I'm not at home, so I'm using an iPad and it's not very effective and I can't type and interrupt, and I've got a lot of questions that I would like to ask and have answered. It's just it's not a good time to bother you all with my questions, but I want to send out the questionnaires to the different agencies, and I'd be happy to, was happy to do that. And I'm happy that we got some responses, but I'm very disappointed that some did not respond. And I'm very disappointed that some responses did not actually meet our needs. I asked if they could advertise and publicize to the various state agencies that serve the deaf, that let them know that they need to provide interpreters without being educated again and again repeatedly, or having the client say, hey, you have to provide me with an interpreter. This is the law, you have to do this. And then they argue back and they say, no, it's not. And the client themselves says, well, all right, fine. And they give in and they go ahead without an interpreter. This has been customary throughout the years, and it needs to change. The state must be strong in advocating and advising all the various agencies that serve the deaf in various ways, especially nursing home and assisted living facilities. Deaf people are being ignored completely, and this has to stop. So I'm asking the Department of Aging. I got no response, but I did notice that, hold on just 1 second, let me get something. The Department of Health said yes, they should, but okay, now then what then? Some patients go to nursing homes or assisted livings and they ask for an interpreter and they say, oh no, we don't have funds for that. And the patient or the family says, yes, you should, you need to, and that needs to stop. Those kinds of responses need to stop. Department of Aging gave us no response to our questionnaire. The Department of Housing did not respond. They need to respond to our questionnaire, and so that we can have a better understanding of how we can advise them to best help the deaf community. Another concern that I had was Kelby's letter dealing with interpreters. I wasn't exactly clear. Does that mean that Kelby has given the person who asked for information all of the various options and they could choose how to advocate for interpreters throughout the state of Maryland? So I'm going to hold on to that. Okay, at least Dr. Lisalee said, hold on to that. That letter is different than what we're dealing with right now. Right now, we're talking about outreach. And I understand your issue regarding the interpreters and placing the interpreter bill, but I think that's a separate concept. But other ideas about the questions for the agencies? Mary Lynn, no, then I'm done. I'm done. Thank you. Okay. This is Lisalee. Thank you very much. Next is Jason, and then Dr. Gray, and then Council Member Darla. Jason.
I wanted you to elaborate. Maybe you might need to provide a different format. I believe that was sent in Google form, but I do know that my husband works for the government, and he has commented very often the trainings that are required and things like that. At this point, I think that I recognize that the government may not know how to address deaf people and their needs. And my husband has often said that. So again, maybe 504 training should be required to provide, so that people know how to provide access that's effective, adding interpreters and adding communication modalities and different strategies for communicating with individuals. Again, there's 504, 508 training, interpreter and communication requirements that I don't see them being well versed in. So again, on state property, they're required to take training, but I do not see how they're handling students with students with special needs. Those at Towson University, they have required
No, they should.
They
require.
should, if a student attends Towson University, they should have required training that they know, and they know how to accommodate that student's needs or individual's needs if they're a consumer.
Dr. Lisalee says, thank you. Good point. Perhaps for, in our minutes, our report is not attached to a Google form. Maybe we need to make it more reader friendly. Maybe the next step, that would be the first step of many steps.
Jason said that was my concern, that it was not accessible.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Next is Dr. Gray. Hello, and thank you. I would like to follow up with Marny regarding her comment. I can't remember all of the responses, but Marny's comment. Marny, for example, you did report on our questions, but I was asking for more data, specific data. For example, deaf individuals who are in the school system in Maryland, what are the numbers of deaf that are white, Black, Hispanic, or Asian, the graduate success rate, the pipeline to higher ed or employment. That data will then help us to analyze, and we as a council can then assist to address the systemic structural racism. So I think that it's very nice that the state agencies have responded, but broadly, but we want more specific data, which I think will help us to address the specific issues. That's the end of my comments. And I may agree with Michelle that we set up a one-on-one meeting between the council members to discuss how to improve. Perhaps maybe our questions are too broad, and they responded very broadly. So we'll get down to the nitty gritty and get more details that way.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gray. The chair is we'll call on Dakota.
Hello, everyone. I had to unmute the phone. I wanted to go back to the questions, which I initially didn't see the questions. I did the update, but didn't see the questions. However, the services, the aging services that are provided, as you know, are through our AAAs, our area agencies on aging. And I think that we need to do a one-on-one to kind of discuss what are the goals in collecting this information, because some of it we don't collect. Certain data that was in the questionnaire, we don't collect it. So I kind of want to have some kind of clarification of exactly where we're going, what are the goals, what do we need? And I'd be more than happy to chat with you guys.
Thank you very much, Dakota. Thank you for your response. I have a comment if there's no other hands that are raised. Okay, I recognize the Vice Chair, Vikki. Oh, Marny Helfrich, I'm sorry, interpreter error.
I just, in response to Larry's comments, I think similar to what Dakota said, we publish a lot of information about special education students in the state. We typically do not disaggregate it by eligibility category. If there isn't specific data inquiry, if someone could maybe contact me directly or put it in writing, then I can see to what extent we are able to break the data down in that way and release it. I would have to check with the data folks in our office, but I'm happy to pursue that to the extent that we're able to do so. There are certain complications with the data that we can get into at another time, but I'm happy to look into that. But that's not data that is traditionally or generally made available in that form.
Go ahead.
I have a comment based on, as I was reading through the reports, I had a thought. It's not enough to make information published in just English. We need to provide information in ASL videos. We need training. I think direct training is the best, but to just have an email from the State Department, or to say, hey, we will just provide an interpreter, or you need to provide an interpreter, or to say, oh, there's an ASL video. I think often there's more in-depth. The challenges are deeper than just providing an interpreter or just providing an informational video. I would just like to see what the state is doing. What's their actions? What is their actionable outreach that they're doing from the state to reach the deaf population? Again, that's just my personal thoughts. And based on some of the comments the responses that I read, should we set up a task force for this work? Should we have 3 individuals who will meet with the various agencies, and that they would have specific questions in regards to the outreach efforts? I'm just curious what are the council's thoughts on this? I would like to ask ODHH ODHH to meet with the various state agencies. That was a question from Michelle. Michelle asked to say, what do you mean by task force? So for example, when there's a specific question or specific ask, whether that's, for example, like Mary Lynn had mentioned, or like Marny had mentioned, they don't serve individuals themselves directly. It's they're served through the school system. So should we establish a task force who knows what the consumers need to pull out this specific information about what we're asking? Again, instead of just generalized information. Again, based on the recommendation from Mary Lynn Lally,
The proposal was
the proposal was made from Mary Lynn Lally. Mary Lynn?
Okay. Hi, can you see me okay? What do you want me to say?
Your proposal, you wanted to address systematic inequities. So from what you've heard from today's discussions, how do you feel? What should be the next step forward?
Okay, really what's happening is what you call, systematic discrimination against deaf individuals. It's systematic. Where every agency needs to know that if there is a deaf person there, that they need to provide an interpreter. We always feel that, the state as a whole could develop some kind of guidelines to disseminate to all of the various programs, institutions, state agencies, explaining that it's mandated by law that interpreters be provided, or at least programs must be made accessible to the deaf community. I mean, you know, I do like the idea that we meet on an individual basis, but meeting individuals, those people change, they get promoted to new jobs, new positions, and there's high turnover. So we should have printed fact sheets that is sent out through the system.
Okay, thank you. So one recommendation is that we start with each agency.
The council.
So the council, should we meet with each state agency? Should we appoint a task force to handle this work? We could have, say, 3 people on the task force, or should the council meet with each agency? I mean, should this go before the full council? Apologies. The chair
Aaron.
recognizes Aaron.
Hello, everyone. I just would like to add an additional thought. Number of years ago, maybe it could have been 4 or so years ago, we did have individual meetings with various state agencies, and it was very, very helpful. Now, what I'm asking as a state agency rep, if we decide to do it that way, if we could have, I don't know, a list of specifically what we are looking for from there at that meeting, because the reason being is that the state agencies may choose change who might be involved in the discussion. I'm not, you know, that person may say they're willing to host the meeting, but then they're not there at the table. So I'm requesting that if we determine that we meet individually with these agencies, that we have a predetermined list of questions that we will be asking for or information we are looking for, and then they can bring the correct, most appropriate person to that meeting with us.
And I would like to add to Aaron's comments. 4 years ago, Aaron, I think you were vice chair at that time, but the state had gathered information. There was presentations to the council, and it was great to really understand the role that each agency does and how it works to the community. Again, and how we could be involved with the state agencies. And so maybe that's something we need to repeat.
That's
again. Aaron, if I remember correctly, there were specific individuals, and you just did bring up the points, and that's correct. But I think that's great that we do need to be ready with a list of criterion or agenda topics that we would address.
First, Michelle agrees with Aaron's suggestions, and the chair recognizes Dakota Burgess.
Hi, we did, Brenda, I do remember we had the individual meetings with the council. However, I don't know what the outcome of that was. Maybe it was more of an information-based kind of thing. But moving forward, I believe, I don't know if a task force is what we need, but maybe a committee, because there has to be, what is the goal? What are we trying to accomplish? So we really have to have some strong, I guess, guidance or where we're going with it. Rather just meeting and meeting and meeting. We have to have some kind of foundation of what we're trying to do, what we're trying to accomplish. Thank you.
This is Dr. Egbert. Thank you so much. And I do agree, we need to have goals. What do we want as an outcome? And I do remember in our bylaws, it says that we can work within our bylaws, the limitations of our bylaws. So what is the goal? I think we need to establish a goal. And again, going back to Mary Lynn Lally's motion or suggestion for the interpreters, it was a comment for the interpreters. Becky, if you
Oh,
can
sure.
sign
Sure.
more centralized in the screen, please. Adjusting the
Mary Lynn.
screens. Aaron, okay. I just want to add, this is Aaron to Dakota. I'm thrilled that you remembered this meeting, that specific meeting. We were very fortunate because we had those meetings and then we had that presentation at the Maryland Association of the Deaf Conference. You all came and shared with the deaf community, and it was a great opportunity to share information with the community at large in Maryland. And if we have those meetings again, I believe that it should be with the intention of meeting some goal to continue to share that information with everyone.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you. The chair calls on. Oh, Spencer Jove.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Spencer. It's great to hear from everyone, and I hope you all are doing well. Just following up on this discussion, I remember when we met with Chair Summers and the Vice Chair some years ago, my executive director and I went to ODHH's office and had a really great conversation about what the needs are from the community and how MCCR can rise to the challenge of meeting them. And over the years, even before we had that meeting, the agency was already taking steps to make accessibility as seamless as possible through adopting VRI. Our intake questionnaire has been updated where we ask from the outset, does an individual need any accommodations? Whether it is an interpreter or it is a translator because of limited English proficiency, if you are blind or deafblind, we ask that information up front so that way we can make note in the file and we can ensure that we have, without needing to constantly receive that request throughout use of our services, the tools needed to break down those barriers so that way we can address these allegations that we're investigating and hopefully arrive at a favorable resolution to all of the parties that file a complaint with our agency. The biggest benefit to us as we continue to work with our chair, Gary Norman, who is blind, and Commissioner Rosen, who is deaf, who have been wonderful assets to our agency, and we really appreciate their input and how we can improve our services. What we need to know from the community, though, is where do holes exist that we can fill? And specifically with outreach, where can we go to help connect with the community to let them know who we are as an agency and what we do. Our education and outreach unit is only 3 individuals. The executive director, deputy director, and myself all supplement their efforts. And we make a concerted effort even during COVID work from home to continue connecting with communities across Maryland. Part of the successes that we've seen, though, are through those partnerships, and that's what we noted in our response to the questions that the chair circulated to our agency. Partnerships like with ODHH and with this advisory council are going to be key to making sure that we're answering those questions, we're making those connections. So if we're going to follow up with agencies individually, that would be our ask. Where can we do better and who can we connect with to make positive things happen, to get the information out there so folks know who we are, and if they believe they're a victim of discrimination, how they can go about connecting with us. And also knowing it's not going to cost them anything. And it's going to be as hassle-free as possible because we front load that because we recognize we have an obligation to provide those accommodations from the outset, and we do it. The times that we've had issues have been through the contracted vendors that we've worked with, and we've had extensive communications with Director Burke about that. We haven't had those issues recently. I'm very pleased to be able to say that, but definitely if we can do better, we want to know better and we want to know how. So I answered as best as I could the questions, but if you want to contact me directly with more specifics, I'd be happy to engage in that conversation with you.
All the
Thank you very much.
agencies.
Thank you very, sorry, the interpreters just shifted. So again, Lisalee, it's okay. Lisalee.
And thank you, Spencer. I think you've made some very good points. If we know of specific areas that could be needing our help, we could let the agency know. Now, I call on Commissioner Marny.
Marny?
I just wanted to return to the idea that Mary Lynn shared about some kind of education or outreach to agencies, because there are a lot of agencies in state government that aren't represented on the council as well. Into sort of a reminder maybe about the obligations of state agencies under Section 504 and the ADA, and maybe some pointers about the kinds of accommodations that members of the deaf and hard of hearing community might need in terms of interacting with state agencies. And I wonder if Kelby feels like that's a role that would be appropriate for ODHH to play in terms of creating those kind of resources and disseminating them, or asking DBAM or one of the other like management agencies within the state government to do that, or because that's something that I think would need to happen at sort of a broader level than just the agencies that are represented on the council to have maximum impact. So I'd love to hear what Kelby thinks about that.
Chair would like to ask Director Brick to respond.
Hi, this is Kelby. Again, and I'm going to repeat Marny's question just to make sure I'm clearly understanding this. You wanted to know what would be the best or the central distribution point for this information. Was that your question, or whether, who was the best to disseminate this information, Marny? Was that what you were really getting to?
Yeah, I mean, if you thought that what Mary Lynn was asking for was appropriate and helpful, and if so, would it come from ODHH or from another agency within the government?
No, you got it.
Okay, first of all, this has been a long-standing discussion. I think it's very worthwhile. So, apologies. This is a very timely discussion. And the reason that we have this council, this is the reason that we have this council, is to facilitate this communication between members, to share accountability, to increase accountability. Again, this is great. So how do we collect and disseminate information is a discussion. And it might be a little bit premature because at this point, okay. There were still some questions on the initial questionnaire itself that we wanted to clarify. Were they too broad? I know that the responses were too broad. So let's decide what information we are gathering, and I think we need to keep on track with that. Again, I want to know precisely what you want from each agency. If there's broad questions, we may need to tailor those questions from agency to agency. What we ask from one agency would be different than another agency. We need to drill down into what we're looking for. Marny, I understand where you're going for this. With this, and as the chair said, this is a great opportunity to find all of this information. We want to discuss outreach and accessibility. If that's our goal, we want to figure out, is this happening through sign language? Is it just videos that are captioned? Again,
Sign language interpreters.
I believe that all of the state agencies have been pretty good about making sure that all of the videos have captions. But there's also a lot of individuals who do not benefit from captioning, and they may need an interpreter. They need that ASL interpretation for clarification, for understanding. So that's something to consider. Now, could we expand our resources within our page? That would be a consideration. That's something that we could do, but again, I'm going back to that word of resources. Our goal is to become a clearinghouse of information. So that means that we gather information from various state agencies, and we need to place that within our website in an easy to find way. Again, where is it best to leave that information, within our website or to share that back out? And so that's something that we need to discuss. And I think this is a very timely conversation, and we need to consider continuing this conversation before our next meeting. And we can have an interim discussion before the December meeting and clarify exactly what's the best way to do this. Again, as I understand it, the state agencies, we've had this conversation before. They really do want to do more. They want to involve the community more and make sure that they're accessible, but they need more specific feedback on how to do so. And we need specific asks. So we can reach out to them, but we need to be more specific. And if we have something that we can provide for them, that would be great. Again, I'm going to encourage you to continue this conversation. Obviously, we're in support of this. Thank you. And that's why we have the council.
The chair recognizes Councilmember Mary Lynn, and then Jason. Okay, can you see me? Okay. I would like to also add that, I know that there are federal laws. Exactly what they say, the exact phrasing, I'm not sure. But they explain what accessibility means to deaf, blind, and hard of hearing. So we need to include that in a brochure or tip sheet or whatever, and have it signed and recognized by the governor of the state of Maryland, and then under the Office of Deaf and Hard of Hearing, they can then determine, explain how they can get interpreters and how they can have captions and so forth. If there is this in law and it is sent out to all programs and institutions and agencies, I'm sure, and prisoners, they are being denied their access all the time. They're not getting captions on their TVs. They're not permitted to use video relay. And I'm not just talking about senior citizens. I'm talking about all of the various groups of deaf and hard of hearing and deaf blind people. It needs to be in law stated very clearly that you are responsible for providing and making things accessible to all of these individuals. This is an idea that I would like to suggest.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary Lynn. Call on Jason Corning next. Jason?
I'm curious, are we going to have a break? Because I have been watching the screen for about an hour and a half. I need a little bit of a break for my eyes. May we?
Well, we're supposed to end our meeting in 30 minutes. I'm not sure. Let me ask the staff.
I thought the meeting ended at 4.
I have it from 1 to 3 on my schedule. Let me check with the staff.
Staff says that we have to stop in 30 minutes. Right now, it is
Kelby said 3.
Director Brick is saying we stop at 3. We have a hard stop at 3. The interpreters are all scheduled until 3 for 2 hours. That's how it's been. Director Brick says, I think people might be confused. Historically, we would have our meeting first, and people would come and observe. And then sometimes we go on to have separate discussions. But during the summer, during our meeting, it was just the council, and we had a separate town hall meeting elsewhere. So it wasn't attached to this council meeting. Okay, hopefully that's helpful.
Okay, the agenda does say 1 to 3 in the agenda. Okay. All right. Okay, well, so then I'm going to encourage, okay, well, in the interest of time, let's think here. Let's think. Okay, so we're just still discussing old business A. Do we want to agree that ODHH will meet with the various state agencies? Or do we want to set up, not a task force, I don't know if that's the correct term, but set up an ad hoc committee to do the meetings with them? Okay, if the meeting ends at 3, we really need to finish this conversation and move on to the remaining agenda items. So, do I see a motion on the floor? Does anyone want to make a motion? Or shall we just close the discussion and move on? Vikki has her hand raised.
Time is of the essence, and we're running out of time, and I'm confused with the previous discussion. I thought that the council member, Larry, wanted to talk about systemic racism. But then the discussion changed. We went into a mixture of various issues. And now we don't have time to discuss it today because we have other things on the agenda to talk about. That's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you for your comments.
Dr. Gray, you have your hand raised.
Hello. So in the interest of time, and I think there's some confusion onto what exactly this agenda item A was. There are several things that we need to address before we discuss the bylaws. So I feel that this issue is very important. So if time runs out, I'm not sure what we do. Do the bylaws allow us to table this for the next meeting? We have a lot of, do we table the bylaws to the next meeting? There's a lot of issues remaining that we need to discuss. And we need to discuss these issues.
Okay, regarding the bylaws discussion on the agenda, what was proposed for changes in the bylaws were not possible because we have to go through legislative session for a vote to change our bylaws. My own proposed bylaw changes I have withdrawn, and Mary Lynn, I think she has withdrawn her proposed bylaw changes as well. To this point, systemic, we could call an emergency meeting if the council feels that that's necessary. But right now, we're talking about 4A, and on the agenda, we need to have a motion from a member of the council. Do we want ODHH to assume the responsibility for continuing this? What's your pleasure?
Okay. I'm reading here the comments in chat.
Aaron is, the chair calls Aaron.
Could someone sign the chat?
Someone
Someone is signing the chat, but that is not interpreting. That is not a voice interpreter for the chat. The state agencies are not catching all of the information. Would the chair like the interpreters to read the comments in the chat? Lisalee, do you want us to read the comments in the chat?
It's been being signed.
Right. Okay, Lisalee's asking everyone to hold on just a moment. Okay. So we are reading the chat, and I cannot read the chat without and voice over it. So I've read the chat myself. Michelle, let me read this out loud. Michelle Westfall commented, I thought the agency update. There's a comment from Michelle Westfall about the agencies updating the questionnaires and their answers. Norma had a comment that we were supposed to we could consider a special meeting for this purpose. And Mary Lynn has suggested calling a special meeting as well. And that's a summary of what has been discussed in the chat. And that's, I guess, what we can talk about, what's on the table now. Is there a motion on the table? Dr. Gray, I see your hand raised. Let me call on Dr. Gray.
Hello, you're right. I do agree with Norma. With item A, we were supposed to have a special meeting prior to this council meeting. It did not happen. And now I'm concerned that we want more special meetings. I want to ensure that we follow our bylaws, not to abuse the special meeting purposes. So if we hold a special meeting, what is the purpose of that meeting? Is it to discuss 4A only? And if so, make sure that you hold a meeting to discuss A, and at the next meeting, we address all the other issues remaining. But I'm concerned about having constant special meetings, and I want to make sure we don't abuse that purpose.
Is there a motion? Do we see any more? Do I see any more comments? This is Lisalee, Dr. Egbert. The chair is calling on Jason Corning.
I don't want to waste the council's time, but I think it is critical that we go ahead and have council reports and let them know what's going on, because there's some critical information out there. We've been waiting and waiting and waiting, and there's no break. So it would be nice for us to take our turn and each of us have comments.
This is Dr. Egbert. Okay. I'm seeing no other hands raised at this time. So do you want us to go ahead and we should continue discussing A, or should we close discussion and move to B?
Michelle says we're still under old business. We cannot offer reports. Gregory James, DHS says move that we table item A and move to B. Dr. Larry Gray suggests we close A if there are no objections. Michelle says I second Larry and second Mr. Mr. James.
Okay. This discussion, we will table discussion of 4A under old business. Are there any objections to tabling this discussion? I see a second. We have a second by Michelle. Michelle seconded Larry and Greg James' comment. Okay, so we will move on to B, seeing no objections.
Right.
B is the Maryland School for the Deaf discussion. There is a request for the Inspector General to investigate structural and systemic racism. And this was proposed by Dr. Gray. Dr. Gray, would you like to speak to this? Or is there any other discussion? Dr. Gray?
Hello, I am Larry. The community members are probably aware, but the state representatives may not be aware of this issue. But the Maryland School for the Deaf, and I've heard, and maybe some of you have experienced and some have heard, for many, many years, have addressed racism and other issues with the superintendent who recently retired. Now, Mary Lynn brought up an investigation about systemic and structural racism or injustice. We want to ask the Inspector General from the Department of Education to go to the Maryland School for the Deaf to check this out, because oftentimes there's things that are discussed in the school, within the school, and things that are separately discussed in the community, but there's no one that's been involved in checking it out. And I know that they have opened up a new position for Chief Diversity Officer to check into the systemic racism. And I want the IG to be involved because this has been years and years of going on. And we want to have this IG come in and do external investigation and internal investigation, and then make some suggestions for some changes.
Chair Egbert is asking if there are anyone who would like to discuss this. Okay. Norma said she totally seconds Dr. Gray, what he just said. Shall we discuss? Is there anyone like to discuss this topic? Michelle said MSD has been working on this issue. They have set up, Michelle commented, they've set up work committees. The chair now recognizes Aaron.
Hello, this is Aaron speaking from MSD. Some people have already added some comments in the chat box just recently on our responses to the questions that we have received as well. You're correct, MSD is working on this process. Larry mentioned a few things already in his comments. MSD is now in the process of searching to hire what we call a Chief Diversity Officer, CDO. Michelle has already mentioned that we have these working groups that have been working. There are 6 separate working groups. They started working last summer and they are continuing to work through the school year. There are 6 different categories that they are checking into: curriculum, resources, cultural sensitivity training, student life, school environment, resource, and family engagement. MSD is also developing Black Lives Matter resources that are then posted on our website currently. You can see a tab on and how we're working on injustices in our community on our website. So those are just some, and we also do have our Board of Trustees that are continuing to work on their part of this, part of the investigation as well. And we will be then having, through the Board of Trustees, is in the process of hiring an independent consultant to do exactly that, to overview discrimination, hiring practices, and other sections of our program. Hopefully that answers your questions as to what's happening now at MSD. And then I personally, as an MSD representative, have not been involved in those meetings that have been happening within MSD and ODHH. I'm not sure if Kelby has anything else to add, since I personally have not been involved in any of those meetings, but hopefully that helps to answer some of your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The chair is calling on Kelby and then Norma. Oh, apologies, Vikki.
This is Vikki. I have something, a comment about the 6 working groups that Aaron is talked about. I am, in full disclosure, I am part of the MSD, MDAD investigation of MSD. I am part of my investigation. People have complained that those 6 working groups truly are a facade just to make MSD look like they are doing something, but really behind the scenes, they are not doing anything. So that is my concern about those 6 working groups. Are they effective, or are they just look at, see what we're doing something, and then once the heat cools down, then they go back to their old practices? That is my concern about these particular 6 working groups that Aaron had mentioned at Maryland School for the Deaf.
Thank you, Vikki. Chair calls on Norma. Hello, I'm Norma. I'm in support of what Dr. Gray and Vikki have just commented in regards to MSD. I think it's wonderful that Michelle and Aaron have mentioned the different activities and the different actions undertaken by MSD in the past. But what I've noticed and what's missing, and again, maybe this is my opinion and it's well-founded, but something that I have noticed is that within the state, it seems to be no involvement and no accountability. No one is holding the school accountable. There's no ownership, shall we say, on behalf of the state and how that school is run. So again, where is the role, who has the role of oversight to MSD? Do we call upon the Inspector General to have an investigation to force the state to become involved with this? Again, I think it's dangerous to let one entity have full independence and autonomy. And as we've seen, this doesn't seem to be working well. So how can they self-inspect themselves? Should the state's Inspector General get involved in this processes? Michelle wants to comment on the Superintendent Search Committee. I believe there's a comment in chat that there is an interim superintendent has said that the Board of Trustees is looking into a consultant. There's a consultant to go through the hiring and HR records. So the chair is going to call on Dr. Gray to comment.
Aaron, thank you so much for your comments. But as Vikki and Norma have mentioned, is there any state oversight or intervention? It seems that everything is internal. They're working internally to solve the issues, But I think this issue has been going on for a very long time. And it seems like, okay, fine, we are now working very diligently, and so that no one from the outside is able to be involved. I think it's important from someone external to MSD be involved, so we can make sure that going forward, we of course have to address the past, what's happened in the past, and I think there are just so many variables here. I'm sure things have been overlooked, things and problems can reoccur again. So I think it's important to have the state involved, like perhaps the investigation, Inspector General be involved.
Is there any more discussion on this topic? The chair sees none at this time. Oh, apologies. I call on Councilmember Aaron.
Aaron, you're there.
Aaron, the interpreters see Aaron. You can go ahead and sign. We can
See you. Yes, we
We're
see
ready. Go
you,
ahead.
but yeah, my screen all of a sudden went out and it just says the word Zoom. But I can hear the interpreters voicing and it seems that they can see me. So I'm going to go ahead. It seems strange that I am now signing to a screen that just says the word Zoom on it, but I will proceed. As odd as it may be. Well, thank you all for your comments. I am now taking some notes for myself as well. And I will then bring that information back to our team at MSD. Please let me know how you would like me to share the feedback that I'm hearing from our discussion today and with our school at MSD. And also there have been some comments that I want to make sure I mentioned. MSD is a state agency. And our superintendent, you saw in our captions that we are now in a national search for the new superintendent, but we are overseen by the Board of Trustees. So I want to make sure, it would be helpful for everyone to know our structure here at the school at MSD, but decidedly, you know, I have made some notes and I will definitely bring them to our team at MSD and let me know if and how I can share that feedback from our leadership team to our leadership team. And I am not able to click off my video because I really don't have a screen. All I see is Zoom, and just let me know
If somebody can.
if someone can help.
Aaron, your video is down. Lisa, is there any more discussion? Dr. Egbert has asked for more discussion. I am seeing none. Should we move to a vote? Oh, Jason does have his hand raised. Jason said, I move to close this discussion in the interest of time. We have several minutes. My eyes are tired. We've been going for 2 hours straight. So there's quite a bit of eye fatigue on my behalf. So Lisalee wanted to clarify, that was a formal motion to close discussion and move to a vote on this motion by Dr. Bry? Okay. Dr. Egbert is asking, are there any objections? Do we have any objections? Seeing none, that means it has passed. I'm now waiting for ODHH to inform me what our next steps would be. This is Director Brick. Hello. So if in the interest of time, we're seeing nothing else, you can go ahead and close old business and move to what, close the meeting. We can table the remaining agenda. And what passed? You said it passed. You did. The vote has passed, Dr. Egbert. There's no objection. So now what's next? You could continue on with the meeting. You have 5 minutes left. Do what you will. Next on our agenda is the discussion to restructure the advisory council for ODHH. Again, this would require a legislative action. Is there any discussion on the restructuring?
Mary Lynn says I move that.
And Dr. Gray is, I'll call on Dr. Larry Gray. Dr. Gray?
Yeah, it may require legislative approval, but it's important that we discuss that. And if we want to go and decide whether we want to go the legislative route or not. But time has run out and we need to discuss this before our December meeting if we want to make changes to our bylaws. I agree going legislative route is fine, but we need to make sure that the council agrees or not first before we move in that direction to go to the legislature. Thank you very much.
Director Brick? So before the meeting comes to a close, I just want to clarify the discussion. Do we need to call a meeting before December? And that's fine if so, but we need a formal vote on this request, because if we do not receive the request now, it becomes a more complicated process to do so later. So if we need to schedule something, we can work with the chair to schedule something before our next regularly scheduled quarterly meeting, which would be December, or you could take the vote right now.
Lisalee says, do we have a motion to that effect? I see in chat, Mary Lynn, are you making a motion? Michelle is making a motion for a special meeting to finish A. Does that mean anything else on the agenda that you want to discuss during that special meeting? And the rest of the agenda, she adds. Michelle has made a motion. Do we have a second? It's been seconded by Norma. Moran, is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Any objections? Motion is closed for discussion. Now it goes to a vote. Are there any objections that we have to having a special meeting? Anyone have any objections to holding a special meeting? I see no objections. It now passes. We have 1 minute left to close the meeting. So we have voted to pass to have a special meeting. We will be meeting with ODHH to figure out who and how and when, and we will notify you all, and we will have a special meeting prior to our December council meeting. I think that is it. The meeting is adjourned. I can't see what time it is. Can anybody send me the time? It's 3 o'clock. Okay. Meeting is adjourned at 3 o'clock. Thank you all. Take care. Be safe. Be well. Seeing you all soon. Thank you, interpreter.